Hello, welcome to Big Bang Radio Spotlights. This is a show where we talk to independent artists from all around the world, all about their music and their process for making it. I'm your host, Isaac Anderson, and today I get to sit down with the musician Kaley Rutledge. Without any further ado, here's the interview. Kaley, thank you so much for joining us today. We really do appreciate it. I'm really excited to talk to you because you have an awesome musical history and you just launched some new stuff that I'm really excited to talk to you about. But I want to start at the beginning of your musical journey, just like we do with all the other musicians that we talk to on the show. So the first question I want to ask you, Kaley, is what is your earliest musical memory?
The first memory that comes to mind is I must have been 4 or 5, and my grandmother was actually a harp and piano teacher growing up. And so I think that she was just one of my earliest influences of being around music. And so I think just my earliest memory would be sitting in her music room, watching her gliss on the harp and sitting at her piano. Yeah.
How exactly did you get started playing music and started singing? Like, what was it? Was your grandma that kind of put you in those vibes, or what?
Yeah, she definitely was a huge influence on us. But it's funny because I actually, growing up for most of my life, was an athlete. So I was a huge basketball player. I thought that I wanted to play Division I basketball. And so I actually was not, I really didn't pick up guitar or songwrite until I was 15 or 16, which is still young, but I feel like a lot of artists and musicians are like, I came out of the womb playing a guitar. And so I was kind of a late bloomer. But yeah, so when I was 15 or 16, I'd always loved English class and writing and had written poetry. And I just kind of, with the influence of some of my friends and my grandmother and family, I was like, you know what? I'm going to pick up guitar. And once I did, I kind of never looked back and quit basketball and started really getting into music. So from the basketball court to the stage, really my journey.
Do you remember the first time you actually got on stage and started playing? Like, were you involved in bands before you started writing your own music?
I wasn't involved in bands at all. The first time I think I ever performed was for a friend's, some kind of benefit show or something. I'm from Florida, so it's back home. And I just remember being so nervous. But I just started kind of playing. Once people found out, oh, you play guitar, you can sing, I would just play at really small events or venues and things like that. And then it just kind of progressed from there, I guess. But I really wasn't a part of the band or anything until I started playing my own music and would have my friends, form my band for whatever show.
In your own mind, was there a moment that you can really recall that's like, I don't want to do anything else. I want this music thing to be my path?
The most poignant moment I had was this past summer. As with everyone with 2020, had a rough and tough year. And I actually was thinking about walking away from music totally. I just got to a point where I kind of lost my joy for it and spark for it. And I was starting to apply for doctorate of psychology programs because I've had an interest to be a therapist one day, which maybe I still will. But so I was applying for schools and looking at programs. And then one of my good friends just really tragically took her life unexpectedly. And that event really propelled me to want to do music even more because she was such a proponent of me doing it and always kind of harassed me of like, why aren't you doing music full time? Like, why aren't you really going for this? So that moment was a huge catalyst for me to decide, you know what, I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna make a full album. Let's do this. So that was this past year, 2020.
craft those lyrics, do you have a process for that? Like, do you typically try to go from like an experiential standpoint? Are you figurative? Because especially a song like "Tough Enough," like it really kind of feels very personal. But I don't know, in your own words, how exactly do you go about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, the short answer is I think the songwriting process for me, and I'm sure for most songwriters, is very different for each song. With Tough Enough in particular, it very much was based on true events, based on a relationship that I was in. And I one night can remember just being in my room and being really frustrated and just at a loss. And I mean, that's the beauty of songwriting. It started to help as I got my guitar out. I started to put words to what I was feeling. And that opening verse, that I don't think I'm tough enough for you, that just kind of came to me. And so I wrote that first opening verse, heard the melody in my head. So I wish I had a better answer for this one, but it really just came out. And I brought that verse to my friends here in Nashville, Josh Gilligan and Thad Kopek, who worked with me on the rest of the record. Instantly, when they heard it, they were like, yes, like this, there's something here. So as soon as we played the verse, I think that we finished writing and tracked the whole song in like a handful of hours. Like it just was one of those songs that was ready to be out in the world. And yeah, I felt like we just kind of had to have the space for it to come out. But generally, I mean, that's tough enough. But generally with songs, I mean, I keep notes in my phone. Sometimes I'll be walking around and, hear a melody in my head. So I'll just record the melody and I sound crazy. So sometimes recording it. I'll keep lyrics. It's kind of, I try to draw inspiration all the time. And when I sit down to write, I'll usually pull those things up and say, all right, what's resonating here, and kind of go from there.
As far as your creative process, do you tend to have certain times set aside in the day to create? I know there's a lot of things going on throughout everybody's day, but I don't know, do you tend to like sit down and like certain times of day, like, Saturday, 7 o'clock, that's time to practice music and time to start writing music, or is it just like kind of more spontaneous for you?
For me, it's really sporadic. I've tried in the past of like, okay, I want to hone in on this craft. I'm going to be diligent and say this time I'm going to songwrite, but that just hasn't worked for me. It really is something that I just have learned of. I can feel it when I need to sit down and write. So there's definitely not a specific time. And I read Movable Feast by Ernest Hemingway, and he talks about something that I thought was really interesting. And I'm not going to get his wording right, but his idea was that, if you have an idea, you sit down to write, work on it. And then when you start to get stuck, put it away, sleep on it. And when it's ready, it will come back. And so that's kind of my approach I guess I come from the belief that there is kind of a mystical element to songwriting. And when you have something to say, it'll be ready. So I definitely don't have a rigid approach by any means.
Heard that. Well, I want to hop onto your location right now. So earlier you said you were from Florida, but right now you reside in Nashville, Tennessee. Obviously that's a very big music place. A lot of musicians live there. Just in your own words, how is it being a musician in such a big music city like that? And maybe you could talk a little bit about like where you're from, kind of like how maybe that shaped your music too.
I first moved here in 2010, and again, like I shared, I had only been playing guitar and songwriting really for a few years. So when I came to town, I definitely experienced some imposter syndrome and some feelings of, who am I to be here? And there's people that are so much better than me, and felt very intimidated by that. And that really, for a while, I feel like discouraged me of pursuing music and doing what I love. So I think it was just a matter of overcoming that and saying, you know what, in anything you do in life, there's always going to be someone better than you. And that's actually a great thing. Those are people to learn from. That's not meant to stop you from doing it. So I now love being here, and I love going to shows and constantly being around writers, musicians that are way better than me, because it inspires me and it helps me to be better. So that, as of now, I really love it, but I didn't before. And then in terms of growing up, I'm from Florida. I'm a seventh generation Floridian, which is kind of wild, and grew up in Orlando, about 45 minutes from Disney World. So people always ask, like, did you go every weekend? And we went a lot, but grew up in Orlando, kind of in the suburbs, pretty average American life, honestly. I have one sister and pretty close-knit family, and just really grew up, yeah, always on the water, outside at the ocean. And so that's my only downfall of, or my only thing I don't like about Nashville is how far it is from the ocean, but I've acclimated. So
I want to hop on to just some of your past music. So obviously you put out music under your own name right now, but for a while you put out music under kind of the moniker De Joie. And what was the inspiration to start putting out music under your own name? I know that's a big leap, because that project had a good amount of streams, and you had a good amount of notoriety. And what made the switch?
I think after the events of last summer and just regaining this fresh desire and drive to create, I realized that although I'm so proud of what I've put out under De Joie, and I am actually continuing to write and have some projects for De Joie. So De Joie is still alive and definitely a project that I will continue to do. But I realized that I wanted something to put my name on. I wanted it to be more personal, and I wanted a different sound. And for me, I grew up listening to a lot of 1960s music, particularly 1960s pop. And I think that culminating with my love of really good indie rock of Leslie Feist is probably my musical idol. And so I just realized, I have these sounds that have influenced me, and I'd love to create something where those can really bleed through. So the change of name was, one, because I wanted to really distinguish this sound under Kaley Rutledge from De Joie. And also it was just kind of a signal to me of, all right, this is something new. And also from a practical standpoint, allows me to kind of have my feet in two different places, of De Joie kind of being more for cinematic and orchestral types of creativity, and Kaley Rutledge being something very different.
Speaking about your own solo music, it looks like you have an album coming out a little later this year. I'm super excited for that. Tough Enough is one of the singles from the album, and that's on streaming right now. But what can people expect from the album when it comes out, and just what does it mean to you?
So the album is entitled Tender Heart. Tender Heart, the full album, comes out in October. The reason I chose Tender Heart obviously as a track, but as the album title, is I felt that phrase, Tender Heart, really embodies a lot of what I talk about lyrically throughout the album, which is basically my journey of accepting my tenderness, accepting my vulnerability, and really my journey of healing really is kind of the red thread through the whole album. In terms of, sonically what you can expect, and just, more in that vein, it's definitely a tried and true indie rock record. So I think that people that love, the Shins' earlier stuff, Bahamas, Japanese Breakfast, people that are in that vein, I think will really resonate with it sonically. And it's 10 tracks in total. And one cool thing that I'm excited about is the first song on the record, it's not going to come out as a single, but just as a little teaser, is a song that the band and I recorded with, that we improv'd totally. So it's the last song we recorded, and we basically were like, all right, let's play something in this key and just hit the mic, turn it on, and let's see what happens. So there's some really cool moments on the record that I'm proud of, that I feel like really allowed for people to use their instincts, the musicians that I played with. And I'm, super grateful for just the Nashville community of the amazing musicians we have here, and everyone that played on the record is just like crazy talented. So I'm excited. I know that I can honestly say it's my best that I can do. We're really putting out something great, so I'm excited for it.
Well, I'm super excited to hear that, just on the personal level. And if people want to keep up with all the stuff that you're doing music-wise, how can they find you online?
Yes, so the easiest way probably right now is via Instagram. That's where I'm the most active. So my handle is hi.kaley, Kaley. And I also, all the usual things, Spotify, Apple Music. But for now, that's probably the best personal platform. But if you're watching this, then feel free to shoot me a message and say, hey, on Instagram. I try to get on there every day, so.
Heard that. Well, Kaley, it's been so awesome talking to you. We really do appreciate you taking the time out of your day. But I got one more question for you before you go. So I don't know if you've ever seen a Big Bang Radio Spotlight before, but I'm a musician, but I also love film. And I believe those two worlds are not too far away. And it's got a personal connection to musicians that a lot of other people don't really have. So, Kaley, what is your favorite movie?
Great question. That's a tough one. I would say, can I give you a tie, or does it really have to be one? Okay.
No, you can give me a tie.
I would say my favorite movie is Pride and Prejudice, the one with Keira Knightley. Whenever I just need a comforting, nostalgic movie, that's what I go to. The soundtrack is amazing. The story, it's my favorite book also, by Jane Austen, and it's probably that one. And then secondly, I always say Remember the Titans, just because since I was a little girl, that's been my favorite one. So not exactly the most like indie artistic choice, but I love that movie. It's amazing.
Thanks to Kaley for sitting down with us and talking all about her music. If you guys want to see more interviews just like this, you can find us online at Studio 67 NCC. Thank you all for watching. I'm Isaac Anderson, and until next time, stay lovely.